You've probably written papers all your academic life, but non-traditional projects might be a little out of your wheelhouse. In this video, you'll see some examples of non-traditional projects, some of the reasons you might want to choose a non-traditional project, how to figure out which route is best for you, and how to make those ideas happen. Let's first look at some non-traditional projects to see why you might want to create one instead of something more familiar. This is a visualization called World Food Clock. Here, you can see the counter showing how many tons of food is produced, consumed, and wasted every second. World Food Clock's counter creates a sense of urgency surrounding food waste, which is not something that would be as easily communicated if the same information would be in a table or written out in a paper with long discussion. It gets the data across quickly and clearly without much explanation needed. 99% Invisible is a podcast that focuses on the unnoticed architecture and design that shape our world. This podcast and others give information through digital audio episodes that are uploaded to websites or streaming platforms. Many podcasts like this one will have special guests, like experts in the subject they're discussing for that episode, or someone who's had firsthand experience with the topic. For your own podcast, while you'd still research the topic before having the conversation, you'd also get to have a conversation with your guests, which has the potential of contributing essential stories or narratives to your work, which are not available elsewhere. So how do you make this happen? How do you transition from the thought of writing a paper about your idea to creating something different? The biggest thing is don't go backwards. If you have an idea, flesh out that idea first, and then figure out what kind of project fits it. Don't think of a project type and then try and make your idea fit the constraints of that genre. So first, figure out what information you have and what you have to say. You can do this in so many different ways, but here are a few ways to get started. Having something to say is most important, so figure that out first. If you're not sure where to start, consider the ideas for inspiration here on the left. You can respond to something you found or heard, like an article or opinion. You can look at an idea from someone else's perspective. You can give your own interpretation of something, or you can even combine two or more ideas to create something new. For example, to combine multiple ideas, instead of just examining the concept of deforestation, you could pair that with bookmaking or other industries to see how these industries may be working to combat the effects of deforestation. After you've determined your idea and conducted your research, then start brainstorming. Think about what ideas you're trying to get across. What's your point? What's the purpose of your project other than needing to complete it for a class? What are you trying to get people to understand or do? Who's your audience? Who are you talking to? It's not just your teacher. Then, since this is a non-traditional project, think about which parts of your project will be most important for you to represent visually through audio and through text. Overall, what content do you want to make sure your audience interacts with and understands? Once you've settled on your idea, what you want to say, and the major components you need to include, brainstorm possible project types that'll convey that information well. As you decide, think about if the project type will get your ideas across as you hope, or if you're trying too hard to push your ideas into a form they won't fit into. If it's the second one, you might want to choose a different project type that will be a better vehicle for your point. Also consider if the project you have in mind can be completed in the time frame you have. As with any paper or project, the key is to start early, but some big ideas modeled after projects you may see online could be out of your reach. Remember, larger multi-part projects you see online, especially those sponsored by companies, take teams of people and are often backed by funding. They sometimes take years to complete. Figure out what you can manage in your own time frame and with the resources you have available. If you're having trouble with this, you can always seek help. Just email us at atkinsarea49@uncc.edu, and we'd be glad to talk with you about how to make your project more manageable. One question we get all the time is how to include research in a non-traditional project, especially one that doesn't include alphabetic text. Actually, it just depends on the project. In a paper, you're probably used to asking critical questions in text while incorporating quotations from sources like articles. You'd write your ideas and then use the sources to back you up, or you'd argue with them, or you'd show other viewpoints. In a non-traditional project, you'd still ask critical questions, but account for them in whatever way the new work calls for. Your methods may be less obvious, and you'd have to decide if you'd need to explain your creative decisions to your audience. Let's take a look at how this can work. To incorporate research in a podcast, prepare your interview questions and have ready any information from sources you'd like to include. When talking with your guests, listen to them so that you can ask follow-up questions that are grounded in both your research and in what they say. To incorporate research into artwork, use visuals, colors, and the art style together to make your point. Incorporate alphabetic text strategically, but only if you'd like to. Since art is highly interpretive, you may want to also include a gallery tag to explain less obvious components or include any research or required assignment components. For example, Ben Shah's 1941 screen print here of the two women of color in the waiting room with the sign, "Do I deserve prenatal care?" may at first glance evoke the question of healthcare for women of color, but a deeper exploration into Shah's works as a Lithuanian-born Jewish immigrant whose work, according to the National Gallery of Art, quote, consistently investigates issues related to injustice, would certainly uncover more information. A gallery tag or collection introduction could introduce this information. To incorporate research into a visualization or infographic, which is a specific type of visualization, use text sparingly to convey points with visually striking charts, graphs, and diagrams developed from your data and research. Use icons or other visuals to demonstrate relationships or concepts that aren't based on numbers to quickly get multiple points across to your viewer. Keep in mind that the podcast, artwork, and visualizations are just 3 examples of non-traditional projects, and that there are endless options available to you. If you've included your research in these non-traditional projects, you'll need to cite your sources, and you'll need to do it the right way. Citing sources is important, even outside of the classroom or published work, because your work is becoming part of the discourse or conversation surrounding that topic, and you're using someone else's work. What do you cite? Just as with any other project, you'll cite traditional sources like books and articles, and also any audio, visuals, data, and anything else you use. Anytime you use someone else's work, you need to cite it. The tricky part can be deciding how and where to include those citations, and it'll depend on the type of project you've developed. But you've got options. You can include them in a gallery tag, a small box at the bottom of a visual you've developed, at the end of an audio track like a podcast, in an accompanying website or transcript, in some digital way that's available through a QR code link, or anything else that easily gets your citations to your audience. You can be creative in your delivery methods, but make sure that your audience can easily find these resources. Now that we've gone over the basics, let's recap with some key takeaways. First, figure out your idea before anything else. Second, figure out your medium. What visual, audio, or text-based methods will you use to convey your ideas? And remember, combining 2 or more media elements is also possible, such as if you want to create an art piece with accompanying audio. Third, design your project by meshing your idea with your media. Know that it may look messy at first, but that's okay. First drafts of most things are usually messy. And fourth, cite your sources. Whether this is your first dive into non-traditional projects or you've been at this for a while, Area 49 can help you with lots of things you might need. Just contact us at atkinsarea49@uncc.edu, and we can set up an in-person or online appointment to talk about generating ideas, how to make your ideas happen, what technologies or resources you might use in your project, managing your expectations or project timeline, how to work with the constraints of an assignment, how to talk about what you did with your project and why, and lots of other things. We also offer training for Area 49 spaces, machines, and other equipment, and we may be able to help you troubleshoot select online platforms. We're here to help, so reach out whenever you need us. Good luck on your project.